A lawyer wrote his client's will and left the fortune to himself. Then he sent another man to press chloroform to the old man's face while he slept. The man who pressed the towels never spent a single day in prison. The lawyer, who was asleep in his own bed 3 miles away, was sentenced to die. And the whole design, the forged will, the forged checks, the corpse of one of the richest men in America, came apart because of a single missing letter. A bank clerk in New York read a name on a check. It said Abert. It should have said Albert. The archive never closes. Tonight's file: the people of the state of New York against Albert T. Patrick. Hold one question as we begin, counsel, because the entire trial turns on it. If the doctors cannot agree that a man was murdered at all, can you convict anyone of murdering him? Every other file in this archive begins with a body that is plainly a crime. This one does not.
William Marsh Rice. Born in Springfield, Massachusetts in 1816, he went to Texas in the 1830s when it was still a frontier, and he built a fortune out of cotton, railroads, land, and oil. By 1900, he was 84 years old, a widower, and worth several $1 million.
And he had decided what the money was for. Not for his family, for a school, the William M. Rice Institute for the Advancement of Literature, Science, and Art in Houston, Texas, an institution that did not yet exist and would not open its doors until 12 years after his death. He had already signed the charter. He intended to leave it nearly everything.
In July of 1896, Rice's second wife died. Her will left a great deal of her estate to her own family, and under the community property law of Texas, her estate was not small. It was half of everything the couple had acquired during the marriage. Millions of dollars.
So Rice did what wealthy men do when a law is inconvenient. He changed which law applied to him. He kept an apartment on Madison Avenue, and he declared that he was a resident of New York, not of Texas. A New York man leaves a New York estate, and a New York estate owes his wife's family nothing. It went to litigation, as it always does. The executor of the wife's estate was a Texas lawyer named Holt, and Holt needed evidence that Rice was still a Texan. So he hired a man to go and find it. That is how Albert Patrick enters this file, not as a criminal, as opposing counsel.
Albert T. Patrick, a Texas lawyer who had come to New York in 1892 to escape disbarment proceedings brought against him by a federal judge. Nothing was ever proved, but 2 deaths trailed behind him. A fertilizer magnate who had sued him for $5,500, and, in 1896, his own wife.
I want to be careful here, counsel, because I am about to say something about my own profession. A lawyer is not merely clever. A lawyer is trusted. He is handed the documents, the signatures, the seals, and the secrets of people who cannot check his work. Every protection the law gives him assumes he will not turn.
In the course of his investigation, Patrick met the one person who saw William Rice every day: Charles F. Jones, valet and private secretary. He cooked the old man's meals, opened his letters, and slept in the same apartment. He was the only witness to almost everything.
Together they built something, counsel, and I want you to admire the construction before you condemn it. Patrick drafted a new will for Rice. It gave the bulk of the fortune to Albert Patrick. But he did not stop there. He also wrote in generous legacies for Rice's own relatives, the very people who might have contested it. He paid off the objectors in advance.
Then charge him with forgery, Thorne, and be done with it. A false will is a paper crime. It is not a killing. Every forger in this archive drafted a document and waited for a death that was coming anyway. Rice was 84 years old. All Patrick had to do was be patient.
because he could not afford to wait. Rice's money was moving. He was liquidating property in Texas to fund the institute, and every dollar that went into that school was a dollar the forged will could never reach. The fortune Patrick had written himself into was draining away while he watched. The old man was not dying fast enough.
They began with mercury pills, given quietly over weeks. It was too slow. On the night of the 23rd of September, 1900, Charles Jones laid towels soaked in chloroform over the face of the sleeping William Marsh Rice. The old man died without a struggle. He was 84.
And their counsel, the crime should have been perfect. An old man of 84, in poor health, found dead in his own bed in the morning. No wound, no blood, no struggle, no forced door. A doctor signs a certificate, a family grieves, and a will is read. That is not a murder. That is a Tuesday.
Patrick moved too quickly. Within days, checks drawn on Rice's New York accounts were presented for payment. A clerk at the bank read the name of the payee and stopped. The check was made out to Abert Patrick. Abert. The forger had misspelled his own name.
Sit with the size of that counsel. A scheme that took 4 years, that reached across 2 states and killed a man, and it is undone by one letter of the alphabet, noticed by a clerk whose name we do not remember. The great frauds in this archive are never brought down by great detectives. They are brought down by clerks.
Rice's Texas lawyer had already grown suspicious and demanded an autopsy. The body was examined. Patrick and Jones were arrested. In his cell, Charles Jones cut his own throat and survived. Then he confessed, and he agreed to testify against Albert Patrick in return for leniency.
Understand precisely what the state has just done. It has taken the man who held the towels, the only person who physically killed anyone in this file, and it has made him the case, not the defendant, the evidence. To convict the lawyer, the state had to keep the murderer.
The trial opened on the 22nd of January 1902 before Judge John William Goff. For the people, District Attorney William Travers Jerome. And for the defense, Albert T. Patrick. He defended himself.
And he was good counsel. That is the part nobody enjoys admitting. He knew exactly where the case was thin because he had built the case to be thin. He did not attack the forgery. He could not. He attacked the corpse. There is a doctrine at the center of this file, and it has appeared in this archive before. Corpus Delicti, the body of the crime. Before the state may convict any person of murder, it must first prove that a murder happened at all, that this death was not illness, not age, not accident. In the Bourne file, a town convicted 2 brothers without it. Here, a lawyer tried to survive by denying it.
The doctors who performed the post-mortem agreed broadly that Rice had died of chloroform poisoning. But the lungs of an 84-year-old man are congested for many reasons. Patrick cross-examined them for weeks. He asked Dr. Edward Lee to assume a patient of 84 with dropsy of the legs, congested lungs, and cysts on the kidneys, and then asked what killed him.
The answer was congestion of the lungs and diseased kidneys, which may be caused by chloroform, or by pneumonia, or tuberculosis, or simply by being 84 years old and dying. That is what medicine could tell a jury in 1902, Thorne. It could tell them what the body looked like. It could not tell them why.
No, it could not. And so the jury was asked to do what juries are always finally asked to do, not to follow the science, because the science stopped short, but to decide whether they believed a valet who had cut his own throat or a lawyer who had written himself a fortune. Counsel, the jury is back.
The 26th of March, 1902. Guilty. Judge Goff sentenced Albert Patrick to death by electrocution.
And here, counsel, this file stops being about a murder. It becomes about money. One of Patrick's sisters had married a wealthy man, John Milliken, and Milliken believed in his brother-in-law's innocence. He paid for a team of lawyers, not one appeal, 10 years of them.
In 1906, Governor Frank Higgins commuted the sentence from death to life imprisonment. The lawyers kept working. The press later reported payments to legislators and officials that were never accounted for. And on the 28th of November, 1912, Governor John Alden Dix signed a full pardon.
Dix gave a reason. He said that there had always been an air of mystery about the case. That is the whole of it. Not new evidence, not a witness recanting, not a confession, an air of mystery. And it was signed as he was leaving office. Albert Patrick left New York and never came back. He died in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1940, a free man for 28 years. And Charles Jones, who bought the chloroform, who soaked the towels, who laid them across an old man's face, was never imprisoned at all. He went home to Texas. He died there in 1954 by his own hand. I have read this file more times than I can defend. And what stays with me is not the chloroform and not the pardon. It is that the only thing in this case which survived intact was the one thing the forgery was designed to destroy. The Rice Institute opened in 1912, the same year Patrick walked free. It is still open. It has taught for over a century on the money of a man who was killed for it. But the question I cannot put down is the arithmetic of it. The hand that killed went free by bargain. The mind that planned went free by money. And between the two of them, the law collected nothing at all. Tell me your verdict below, counsel. Was Patrick guilty, and did it matter? The law is what we wrote. Justice is what we wanted. I am condemned to read the difference, one case at a time. Next week's file, a man was convicted twice for crimes committed by a stranger who happened to share his face. Filed, never forgotten.